Today's gospel reading is from Mark, chapter 9, verses 30 to 37. They went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him, and 3 days after being killed he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying and were afraid to ask him. Then they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you guys arguing about on the way?" But they were silent, for on the way they had argued with one another as who was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." This is the word of God for the people of God. Please be seated. So, in this third Sunday of creation, the theme is clean up after yourself. How many times have your parents told you to do that? How many times have you told your kids to do that? How many times do you wish we were better at it? So while preparing for this, I found this 20 ways to clean up after yourself. Please maintain your space neatly. Wherever you are, keep it organized and comfortable and clean. Let's keep the areas that we use tidy, so not just your home or your front yard, but any other place that you go. Ensure your environment reflects our spiritual standards. We believe that the earth is created for God and God walks among us on this earth, and therefore the earth is God's table and we should keep it as such. Individual tidiness contributes to our success. So if you keep your house clean and yourself organized, it kind of becomes a practice that we will extend beyond our walls. Embrace a habit of organization. Have a place for your trash and recyclables in your car or your backpack, and be aware of receptacles around you. I don't know how many times I walked around with a wrapper in my hand waiting to find a trash can as I walked along. A place for everything and everything in this place. Respect the boundaries for wildlife and the environment. Respect shared areas by keeping them clean. Our beaches, our parks, when we use them, be sure to clean up after. Prioritize cleanliness in your space. If you see trash, pick it up. Wherever you are is your space. And just because somebody else wasn't responsible for it doesn't mean we cannot be. Contribute to a healthier environment by being respectful. Honor God's creation around us and treat it as a gift. Leave no trace of you behind. Did you know after thousands of people leave the Burning Man experience in the desert, there is not a single trace of human left behind? They clean it up that well, there's not even tire tracks. Take pride in the environment. Get to know your natural resources around you. Take pride in our river, our beaches, our parks, our swamps, our bird refuges, our fish refuges. There are places all around here that we can take time to get to know and really get to experience and connect to nature. Your cooperation is essential. We can't wait for somebody else to do it. We're each individually responsible and have to be attentive to that. So let's uphold our standards together. The more that we practice good practices, the better our environment becomes. Let people see that you care and share your passion. Tell others about it. Tell others what you're doing. Tell others how they can recycle, especially here in Bradenton. A lot of people don't know that we have recycling areas. Fulfill your role in creating a better tomorrow. Initiative, appreciated, do not wait for someone else, engage, educate, uplift. So uplift the programs that are available, share the knowledge, contribute to wildlife foundations, contribute to refuge, whatever you're passionate about. Manatee Save, some of the bird rescues. I saw one the other day that's kind of hit my heart. There's a whole process to restore the redwoods. Let's strive for a better practice to better our environment. And your attention makes a difference. Now, these practices actually were adapted from ways to clean up after yourself professionally in your workspace. But professionally, we live in the largest workspace that we know, the world. And we're responsible to take care of that. It does not take much effort to apply these practices to our daily living. And the gospel even tells us, you shall not, or the readings today tell us, you shall not defile the land in which you live, in which I also dwell, for the Lord dwells among the Israelites. So we can take that further. God dwells among us. God dwells among this world. It was written for the Israelites by the Israelites because that's the only world they knew. But Genesis says God created all the world and walks among us. Ancient Israelites wanted to avoid polluting the land because God was holy. Anything that was unclean or polluted could not come into the proximity of God because of God's supreme holiness. It was thought that too much uncleanliness could drive God away. It's actually not hard to believe that uncleanliness could drive God away. I would just ask you to take a look at the land where we have clear-cut forests. Mudslides and runoff become uncontrollable. Look at the areas where we strip mine, leveling whole mountains and destroying habitats. Look to where we build new communities, ignoring the natural environment. That kind of hits home here. Manipulating it for our own needs, and what happens? Flooding, wildfires, famines, people and animals are displaced. And we sit back and feel sorry for the victims and then wonder why. Quote, it is fascinating that the writer of Numbers links violence with the defilement of the land. In this instance, in verse 33 and 34, murder will pollute the land. Linkage of transgression and pollution of the land occurs in several other Hebrew passages as well. And one might make the comparison with countries of today. A country that has significant issues with widespread violence is likely to have problems with environmental degradation. Two difficulties seem to go hand in hand, end quote. Now, I found this quote interesting, and I wanted to go a little bit further because this is a nice hypothesis, but actually it's fact. Individual and social characteristics are attributed to violent behavior in schools, yet environmental hazards play an understated role. Ambient air pollution has been linked to neurological dysfunction that inhibits decision-making, and may result in violent behavior in adult populations. And there's an actual study that shows that the highest levels of carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide and fine particulate matter concentrations in the air were associated with increased violent and disciplinary incidents in schools. Our children are affected. And the numbers were astounding. 775.62 thousand out of 100,000, 95% students committed some sort of violent behavior in areas where pollution was highest as compared to rural areas. A direct correlation to children's behavior to the pollutants in their environment. Violent incidents were per 100,000 students per school year, respectively. Schools in urban settings shared a larger burden of the violent incidents associated with air pollution compared to rural schools. Students living in areas of high particulate pollution were 95% more likely to engage in violence. If we want our children to be healthy and whole, if we want to live in a world with less violence, we will want to provide healthy land, air, and water. If we want to live in a truly peaceful society, we will need to decrease the amount of violence, and we will want to provide a healthy land. If we seek to promote viable soil, clean waterways, and breathable air, we will want to shape a nonviolent society. So the two can go hand in hand and very often do. For one, if you step out into a beautiful area where the air is clean, the grounds are clean, people are recycling, you really don't, compared to stepping out to where the water is polluted, the air is polluted, and the amount of stress it adds. You wonder why New Yorkers are so angry sometimes? That might be why, besides just the hustle and bustle. The study shows that clean environment leads to less violence. One of the great concerns we often hear about is drinkable water, or even, in our case, swimmable water because of overflow due to the rains we weren't prepared for. Most people have heard the Earth referred to as the water planet. With that name comes the rightful image of a world with plentiful water. In photographs taken from space, we can see our planet has more water than land. But however, of all the water on Earth, more than 99% of the Earth's water is unusable by humans or any other living things. Only about 0.3% of our fresh water is found in surface water of lakes, rivers, and swamps. The rest of our drinkable water comes from underground. And remember the Flint water crisis 10 years ago? Don't hear much about it today, yet it's still ongoing. It was 10 years ago, and yet Human Rights Watch reports that the people in Flint still don't have clean water. The number of children and young adults in Flint area schools who now qualify for disability services because of the polluted water. People in Flint and Jackson are advocating for their local governments to undo the harm they created by reimbursing them for water bills, replacing damaged water pipes and water mains, providing health and education services, and including local residents in decision making for the want of clean water. When the crisis arose, my friends in Mustard's Retreat, which you've heard a few songs heard by here, actually wrote a song, and I'm not going to play the song because it would take too long. The lyrics say, "The telephone rings and have you heard the news?" Remember, Flint is not a big city, it's a small town. Carrion crows coming home to roost, over the plant you know something went wrong. Take the children and run, they wrote. They said they'll fix it if only we stay calm. Go back to your factories, go back to your homes. Don't get excited, don't lose your cool, and those bosses will share their power with you. Take the children and run. Most politicians lying through their teeth say there's nothing to fear except fear itself, and none of them can tell us if and when it will stop. But they may come and visit, but they won't drink a drop. And take your children and run. You get the idea. The thing is, the poor cannot run. The underprivileged can't run. They can't flee intentional or accidental environmental racism. Now, Flint may or may not have been intentional at the beginning, but the ongoing issue has become intentional environmental racism at the onset. The results in the lack of appropriate responses were and are environmental racism. Psalm 51, which we heard at the beginning today, says, "For I know my transgressions and my sin is always before me." Unfortunately, when it comes to government or big business, it's not always true. And so once we learn to be accountable to ourselves, then we must call on our government to be accountable as well. But much like the gentleman who needed to get to the monastery to feed his soul, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, we too must feed our souls, because this work is spiritual work. Environmental work is spiritual work, and it drains on our souls when we constantly feel like we're butting our heads up against a wall. We need to feed our souls so that we can do the work before us. It can be weary-making when we push and plead for our cause, and it seems to fall upon deaf ears. Our souls grow tired. If we are in care of ourselves, we can easily become spiritually tired and give. If we aren't in care of ourselves, we can easily become spiritually tired and give up. God has the power to make us over. If we continue in daily prayer, God's graciousness and mercy are abundant. There is no reason to settle for a blocked state or a blocked spirit, a tired soul. God has the transformative power to give us new and enduring spirit, to grant a daily reprieve. God desires steadfastness in the inward self, and will teach us wisdom for our sanctification and give us the energy for steadfastness outwardly as well. As Psalms 51 is a powerful prayer, ask God to purge you with hyssop and make you whiter than snow. Ask God for a clean heart and a new and enduring spirit. Then hang on to your hat, for you will never be the same. Conversations and sanctification prepare us to face the environmental crisis and give us a spiritual to address it in an effective way. Spiritual sustenance through prayer is necessary to continue to do the work of addressing climate change. Education is good. Understanding the science is great. But without that spiritual sturdiness and blessing, we won't endure. Paul says, we know that the whole of creation groans, and I believe that if it was groaning then, it must be screaming now, screaming out in torture today. We require spiritual strength to endure the challenge for the environment before us. Quote, creation and many sibling creatures are longing for humanity's growth and maturity as children of God to be liberated from human degradation of the environment and the wanton destruction of life. The earth and the community of life are struggling for liberation. Humanity could step forward and make significant progress in living compassionately and more ecologically responsible for nature. And here, we might edit Paul in Romans to read, who can separate us from the love of Christ in the soil? We need to connect to our spirituality, and connect that to the earth. The earth, God's table, spread out before us. Remember our Ash Wednesday's blessings? We are of the earth, and to the earth we shall return. That's one way to put it. A spiritual leader, Dharma Mutual, claims that, quote, our earthiness is the umbilical cord linking us to the source of our holiness, read as wholeness. Through the earth, not in spite of it, and certainly not beyond it. In brief, our earthiness is a royal cord to deep incarnation. Sally McFay argues that God becomes shockingly physically present to and within the earth, and at the same time, more. We learn that our earthiness links us to the earth intimately, ensouled therein. Literally, work with our hands in the soil, we become sensuously bonded with the land. And this is interesting. Robin Wall Kimmerer observes, quote, recent research has shown that the smell of humus, the smell of earth, exerts a physiological effect on humans. Breathing in the scent of Mother Earth stimulates and releases the hormone oxytocin, which is the same chemical that promotes bonding between mother and child, and between lovers held in loving arms. It's no wonder we respond when we start planting our gardens. It's no wonder so many people find connection with the earth, getting in there as a blessing. That response begins with us cleaning up after ourselves physically, caring for ourselves spiritually, and then loving the earth as we would love ourselves. The earth is our neighbor. The earth is God's table. If we just treat it with the respect that it deserves, we are one step closer to getting everybody else to do it. Let us be the spiritual example in this creation, in this season of creation. Amen.